Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and some of the best Google TV devices actually come from Walmart through their online, and they've got a new one that just came out called the ON 4K Plus. And this is, as its name suggests, a 4K streaming device for your television or monitor. And these are typically used in cases where your television has lost its smart capabilities and you need to get something more up to date to continue enjoying your streaming channels. And these are very inexpensive and often very good solutions. In fact, this new one is only $30. It supports 4K along with Dolby Vision and Dolby ATMOS, and it performs quite nicely. In fact, the processor on this is more powerful now than their Pro box is, which was a surprise. And it's still not great for enthusiasts, but it is a nice streaming option. So we're going to take a look at what the new box here is all about in just a second, but I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that I purchased this with my own funds. All of the opinions you're about to hear are my own. No one has paid for this review, nor has anyone reviewed or approved what you're about to see before it was uploaded. So let's get into it now and see what the streaming box is all about. So let's take a closer look now at the hardware. There isn't much to it. It is a little puck here like the old one was, but it is a little beefier. On the back, you have an HDMI output for your television or monitor. Here is your USB Type-C port for power. You can use a USB-C hub that passes power through with this, so you can get data devices connected. I was able to get Ethernet to work with this to plug it into a hardwired connection, but it was a bit finicky with some of the adapters that I tried. So Ethernet was kind of hit or miss here, but it does work if you wanted to use the port for more than just power. And you've got a reset button over here next to the HDMI port. Now, the performance on this new box feels pretty good. It's actually got a more powerful processor than the Pro version of their ON box does. This has an AM Logic S905X5M, but it only has 2 gigabytes of RAM on board, which these days is a little on the lower end side of things, but that's where this device is kind of situated. But as you can see here, I ran Netflix right from scratch, and it just booted right up on me here without any real lag. It's just very responsive, and it feels noticeably faster than many other cheap devices that I tend to look at around here. So we can jump into Netflix, we can search for something, you can see how quickly things pop up. It's actually a very nice browsing experience, a much better and much zippier experience than I anticipated on this. So you're going to feel a lot less lag here. It's not going to feel as cheap, perhaps, as some of the prior iterations of this device felt. Now, you do get double the storage on this new box versus the prior iteration. 16 gigabytes here versus 8 gigabytes before, so you've got more room for games and streaming apps versus the old one. The remote is largely the same as the prior version. You do have a voice remote here, so I could do a search for Star Trek: The Next Generation. And Google will go out and search for the show here and show me where I can watch it. What I like here is that I'm getting a free option now, so I can watch it on Pluto, but then I can jump into other ways to watch here as well, which include subscribing to Paramount Plus if I wasn't already subscribed. The big change on the remote is the addition of a free button, which wasn't there before. Now, there are lots of free streaming apps that you can get on these Google TVs, like the Roku channel and Pluto and others, but if you push the free TV button, what you get is the Google free TV experience, and that is mapped to the big button here. And their free TV experience is similar to what you get with the other apps. Mine actually has my local NBC affiliate here, at least their news, so that was pretty helpful, but the rest of it here is very similar to what you might experience with other free TV services. It's just that the big button here takes you to Google's iteration of it. Now, Wi-Fi performance on this little box is much better than I've seen on similarly priced devices. So I did run a little speed test earlier out to the internet, and I was able to get a pretty decent rate of performance out of this, about 420 megabits per second or so, 430 maybe, on the downstream, and a similar experience on the upstream, and that's over Wi-Fi. And this is one of these situations where I actually recommend people use this device via Wi-Fi versus Ethernet. And the reason is that the USB-C port on the back only supports the slower USB 2.0 standard. So when you connect your on-box here to a hardwire, as you'll see here as this test runs, you only get about 90 or 100 megabits per second downstream and upstream. So you take a big hit in performance when you connect it via the hardwire. There's no gigabit here. So the Wi-Fi 6 that this has on board, if you have the right Wi-Fi access point, will perform quite well and I think is more than adequate for any 4K stream that you might throw at this. Now the underlying operating system on this is Android 14, so this is a little more up to date on its underlying operating system, but from a consumer perspective it looks a lot like other Google TV devices. It is very much a advertising-centric kind of environment here. So this is what you see when you first boot it up. You'll be given a pitch for something to watch or buy. In this case, we've got YouTube TV and some free stuff on the Google free channel system there. You also get recommendations, and it will build these recommendations based on what Google knows about you. So right now I'm being pitched to watch the Indiana Jones movie on Disney+, along with a few other things on YouTube, along with a free channel of Mythbusters. So it will continually try to think about what you're looking to watch and throw it in there. Below this, you get your apps, and you can adjust these apps by going to the reorder option over here, where you can move things around. It's not the most intuitive way to go about your apps, but it is pretty handy once you get everything dialed in. Below that, you've got things that you were watching prior on other services. Some of these features like recommendations and continue watching will depend on that service being compatible with Google's interface here. So not all will be visible here if you use a service that Google is not in some kind of agreement with for home screen access. And as you keep going, you get access to other things like free stuff, and you have a bunch of recommendations here to watch as well. So it's about the same as it was before. If anything, they're cleaning this up a little bit. It's looking a little less busy to me than it did before, and it's not too hard to find what you're looking for. And again, the performance here feels pretty good. Now, one thing I would recommend that you do if you have other people in the household is get their Google accounts attached to this Google TV and train everybody to switch to their account when they sit down in front of the television. You do that by pushing the little person icon here, and it will give you an account to select or add. And the reason why this is important is because if your family members start watching a bunch of stuff on your account, your recommendations will start to change, especially if they watch more TV than you do. So that's something that I would recommend you do. Otherwise, your recommendations will not be as effective. Now, at the top of the interface, you can quickly jump between different categories of things. So for example, if I go to Live here, I can see the Google free stuff. If I go to the left, we get our recommendation page. I've got my apps all centered over here. And then we've got the library. And what's interesting about the library is that you can set up a watch list of things that you want to watch later. And it does work across a number of services here. However, Netflix doesn't work. So let me show you an example. And I bring this up every year because Google hasn't yet, or Netflix hasn't yet addressed this issue. If I search for Stranger Things, I will get to a Stranger Things landing page here. I can click the button and pull it up on Netflix and watch it right away, which is great. However, if I try to add Netflix shows to my watch list, it's just not supported. So this is an example of how the interface is not always going to be consistent depending on the service. Another thing that wasn't consistent for me in my usage was some of the things that the apps individually support. So for example, I was able to get on Netflix Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision to work fine on my 4K home theater system upstairs. It all looked great. However, Disney Plus did not support the Dolby Atmos audio, even though Netflix and a few of the other apps did. From an enthusiast perspective, one of the things that I look for is the ability for the box to switch the television into the right frame rate. So many shows and movies are shot at 24 frames per second. Those films you want to watch with your TV set into a 24p mode so that it can properly display the content. And only some of the apps on here will do it. You do have to enable the frame rate matching in the settings in order for that to work. And this is an ongoing issue that I've had with Android that doesn't yet appear to be rectified. And Disney Plus was not very good about switching into 24p mode either. In fact, it didn't do it at all. So it's still very much hit or miss as to what different apps will support. I'm sure at some point in the near future there will be an update to Disney Plus and it will support Dolby Atmos audio, but at the time of my testing, it did not work with it. Now, as expected, games run pretty nice on here. This box does have a little more horsepower than prior iterations do, and most of the games that are written for the Google TV operating system also are written for Android phones, and the hardware requirements for games aren't too strenuous here, and this one again is performing a lot better than prior iterations of these cheap boxes have performed. So I was very pleased with the Android gaming performance out of this. It's pretty good for emulation if you're sticking to some of the basic stuff. I would look at the PlayStation 1 back. And I did try to install the Dolphin emulator, which runs GameCube games, and I did try to get a PS2 emulator working on it. I couldn't get those to install on this device, so it's a little limited, I think, on the emulation front. Now, I also booted up the GeForce Now service here, as you can see, and this is NVIDIA's game streaming service that allows you to stream your Steam and other games to your devices like this one. Now, they don't allow you to do 4K to this box. I think they limit 4K to their NVIDIA Shield only, but we are getting 1080p at 60 frames per second out to the display. It's actually running faster from the server, but all is good here. My ping rate's been between 14 and 16 milliseconds over Wi-Fi. So clearly the Wi-Fi 6 here is making a difference, and it seems to be pretty stable now. A little bit earlier when I tested this, it did lock up and reboot my box, so I don't know if this is going to be an ongoing issue of instability, but over the last 10 minutes or so, it has been stable. I suspect that the low amount of RAM on this box might introduce some instability with a more demanding streaming app like this one. Right now, NVIDIA is sending us about 33 megabits per second of data to stream this game. But it's been pretty stable now after the reboot, so you might encounter a little flakiness with GeForce Now. And on the 3D Mark Slingshot Benchmark test, we got a score of 1,607. As you can see, the performance out of this new box is significantly better than the prior two on Google TV devices we've looked at, the 4K model and the prior version of this one. But we're still far behind where the NVIDIA Shield is, which at this point is now an architecture that is a decade old, but still very nice performance here for the price point. All right, one last thing to talk about, and that is the enthusiast angle. How might this work for your home media serving? I use Plex for my home media serving, and it does okay in the sense that the interface here is quite responsive as you jump around to different things because of that faster processor. So you don't have a lot of lag when you're browsing your media libraries, but it does not have the features that enthusiasts want out of a streaming box. So for example, it can't do Dolby Vision from a Blu-ray rip. It doesn't do lossless audio. So it's got all the limitations that a lot of these other low-end boxes have, but you will have better luck playing a lot of your media on this box versus some of the other ones. And it's also not too bad to browse around. So if you were to toss this into a spare bedroom and give people access to your media when they're visiting, they're not going to complain all that much. It seems to do well, but I would not recommend this as a home theater device. So altogether, Walmart has delivered great value here. I really like the performance of this new box. It's something that I think even general consumers are going to notice versus their older hardware. If you've got some old television or old streaming box that just doesn't work anymore, this is going to feel like a major improvement and worth more than the $30 you paid for it. It's great that it supports ATMOS and Dolby Vision, although I had some issues with ATMOS on Disney+. And for the price point, I really can't find much to complain about here. Not an enthusiast device, but something enthusiasts might want to use in their home on some of their secondary televisions. You don't need a 4K TV for this. Anything with an HDMI port will work. But if you got a 4K TV, you'll get a good amount of value out of this box, especially with its broad format support for many streaming services. That will do it for this one. Until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.